To the Auckland Plan Refresh, which is on page 9, and welcome Jacques Victor. Members, this item has been supported by workshops that we've held, and if you go to the hub you can see the record of those workshops, the dates being 9 October, 11 October, 30 October, in addition to the 4 content workshops. So I think it's 7 workshops all up, and it's been quite demanding. But thank you to all the members that have been attending those workshops, and I'd also like to again in this public meeting to thank the board chairs, deputies and their appointees that have been attending those workshops at the invitation of us all. So thank you. Jacques, would you lead off and introduce Denise and Azim, and in your hands.
Jacques just handed over to me.
Jacques, thrown it already. Good.
Good morning, everyone, and introducing Azim Khan, who has also been working on the report, the first report. So there are 2 reports on the Auckland Plan on today's agenda. The first report is on the feedback, and the primary purpose of this report is to advise on how feedback from the targeted engagement has been addressed in the development of the draft plan. So the target engagement was a second round of engagement on the refresh. We did a first round in May, June, and we reported back on that at the beginning of August to the Planning Committee. And then we did a second round from July through to October. So today's report addresses feedback received in that second phase, and also just noting that as part of ongoing engagement with stakeholders, we're still receiving some feedback, and we will address some of that in some of that later feedback in the next item on the agenda. So there have been over 2,500 feedback items received through this early engagement, and over 100 stakeholders and partners. The list of stakeholders and partners is shown on attachment A of the report. Where we have engaged with stakeholders who were not engaged in the first round of engagement, we've highlighted those in yellow so you can see that. Also just noting that there are some stakeholders we engaged in the first round who we didn't engage in the second round, and sometimes that was because they indicated through resourcing or other issues they would rather wait to see a draft plan and respond through the formal consultation process. So the report has 3 attachments. The first attachment, the list of stakeholders. It has the summary of the feedback grouped by key themes. So we've done a high-level summary for you because there is a lot of detail there. And it also has a table which provides in more detail the themes of the feedback and how they've been addressed as we've developed the plan. We have already provided reports to the committee on feedback from local boards. So there have been 2 reports on those, but for completeness we've included local boards' feedback in the table as well, so you can see all of that together. In terms of next steps, we'll be going back to stakeholders on how their feedback has been incorporated, and today really we're asking you to note the feedback and to note that we will be reporting back to stakeholders on how their involvement in the plan is reflected in the draft plan going out for consultation early next year.
Thank you, Denise. So, members, I will move the A and the B. Do I have a second for A and B? Deputy Mayor. And question from Councillor Fletcher.
No, mine was simply to move these recommendations.
I'll take your move. Moved by Councillor Fletcher.
And I was going to say just how pleasing the work that staff have undertaken have been. And whilst I've got a few concerns about the whole issue of health and wellness, I think that this has been a real improvement in the process, and I really want to congratulate the officers concerned.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. It's moved by Councillor Fletcher at this stage, and it's the Deputy Mayor who's second. Further questions? I have Councillors Casey, Walker, Filipina, Member Namani and Deputy Mayor.
It's a comment rather than a question.
Absolutely. It's the motion is on the floor.
Oh, great. This is really clear, Denise and Jacques. What the panels asked for and continually asked for, the advisory panels, is how the loop is closed. And this is very clear. You've been to see them. This is what was suggested. This is what's gone into the plan. I just wish it was as clear for the councillors who have attended all the workshops, because that's what I would now like to see for any future workshops. This is what was suggested. These are the councillors who were present. This is what was suggested by a councillor. This is what happened. And I'm hoping in response to that comment you will tell me there is a new version, because this has got none of the comments from the workshop with councillors recently, this version that's in the agenda. So if you have a new version, I haven't seen it, and it's not been made known to me that another one is coming. So I feel really disappointed and disenfranchised.
So just to respond to that, so the feedback from the workshop at the end of October, there's a handout coming around soon which has a schedule of the input that came from councillors and local board members and how that's been addressed in
Wonderful.
the version.
Can we
that's,
have it?
Yes, well, we were going to cover that in the next item. So the next item, we're asking you to review and approve the content of the plan.
Okay.
The handout will be coming round.
We'll come to that, Councillor Casey.
I'll explain that when we get to that item.
Councillor Wayne Walker?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a question around how you change this refresh. I have a particular interest in the environmental concerns. I've been in touch with a number of submitters, and certainly what's reflected there is a separation of the environment and the cultural, so that both of those aspects have more prominence. And given that this refresh process goes to a related process around management and monitoring, so you have to identify how you measure things. The way you measure things in the environmental sector is quite different to how you measure it in the cultural sector. And I don't need to spell that out. It's quite different, because in terms of the environment, it's loss of species, it's loss of trees, it's a whole lot of things that you can actually quantify, whereas in the cultural area it's different. So how do people actually get that message across? And I've raised it as a councillor. People in the community are asking for it. Are we going to see a change there?
Jacques, maybe.
So we probably can respond to that when we consider that particular outcome of the plan, which we're not doing today, so it would be a bit hard to talk about details on that.
I don't understand that.
Jacques, do you want to just maybe expand on those few words a little bit? I know what you're saying, but if you could put your question again, just pretty succinctly, and then we'll ask Jacques to respond again.
Okay. Submitters have asked for a separation of cultural heritage and environment. I've asked for that. I know other councillors have raised that. It also relates to how you measure and monitor that going forward, okay, which is a part of the plan. So can we have a separation?
So just, can I also help you with your question? Submitters have asked for the separation,
yes,
and I've also asked for the joining of culture and heritage. So just to give some fairness to the community stakeholders that have given input, Councillor, some have asked for separation, others have asked for it to be joined up.
Have you been through the submissions,
Jacques,
Mr. Chair?
Can you give us the reply from your point of view, please?
Yes, I was going to say the same thing. So, yep, some submitters have asked for us to split that. Others have asked and commented on that the bringing together is a really good thing. So you have to consider both sides of that. I think what is also pointed out in the response section is when people have asked for it to be split, when that conversation continues, people then also talk about the importance of bringing the environment and people together, because the two can't be separated, which is what bringing the two together has done. It has linked people in the environment, and what it is essentially saying is that in order for us to achieve better outcomes compared to what we have achieved in the past, that we need to have a change in mindset, and we need a change in behavior. And that change in behavior needs to come from people. and it needs to come in how people think about the environment. And what this approach does is that it says that people really need to think about the environment as a heritage that we pass on to the next generation. And that's where that mindset needs to change. So even though a lot of people initially say split the two, in terms of how they then approach it, they bring the two together, using different words. But so I don't think one must just read part of the sentence and see people want it split. It would be interesting if you look at the detail in for example, the feedback from EDS. That's exactly what it says, split it, and then it says, but you need to bring the two together. So one needs to work through all of that. In addition to that, of course, through a number of workshops, those members that attended the workshops discussed this a number of times, and where it landed more than once was direction to staff to taking all of it into account to proceed on the basis that we have. But of course, that will come to the committee on the 27th of November to consider again.
Something like that. End of the month.
28th.
28th.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Filipaina.
Thank you, Chair. My comment first and then the question based on my comments, and that's in relation to page 18, the Southern Initiative. I mentioned it at workshops, and I'll, just to give you some background, Jacques, you knew with the first Auckland plan, tomorrow's Manukau Pōpō was the document that we had looking at moving Manukau forward. Then the amalgamation, June 2012, the Auckland plan set up or approved the establishment of a steering group for the Southern Initiative. As a result of the six, and these are the six initiatives or focuses were educational achievement, economic development, job growth, public transport, housing, social conditions. And those six from the original plan, they were there which set up the terms of reference for the steering group which I currently chair. My question is, and based on the retention of the Southern Initiative and opportunity for the model to be applied to the West, are those six focus bullet points still in the plan, because it was the founding document that set up the steering group? The steering group purposes was to provide a strategic oversight and implementation of the work program, because if they're not, that changes the whole dynamic around the terms of reference. It changes everything in regards to the Southern Initiative. So my question is, based on what I'm seeing here, and I know the detail is in the digital plan that you'll be discussing, but I want to ensure that either the six focus that we had, the focus points that we had, initiatives, with the transformational, are currently still there, because that is still going to form the basis for the work program moving forward with the Auckland plan refresh.
Councillor Filipaina, I think there are two parts to the answer. The first part is digital plan. Yes, there is a section on the Southern Initiative specifically, so it looks at what it is, its purpose, what it's achieved, that kind of thing. So in that sense, yes. But I suppose there's a broader answer to this. Those six focus areas in the Southern Initiative, like education, housing, social conditions, transport, employment, they have actually become the outcomes of the Auckland plan. They've actually become almost the whole philosophy of the plan. So in that sense, the whole thing has been lifted to apply not just to the Southern Initiative, but those things are important for all of Auckland. So in that sense, yes, they are. Whether they are in the specific write-up on the Southern Initiative, so when you get to the Southern Initiative, that I'll just have to go and check. I'm assuming they are, but I can go and check that.
Yes, please, because I think, as I said through you, Chair, that formed the basis of the terms of reference for the steering group. I'm now seeing that the focus areas are changing as a result of the work that is currently being done in the Southern Initiative in the area. So, I mean, if that's the case, that's fine. then we can redefine those focus areas from a steering group perspective. So I look forward to the further discussion, Jacques, with you and your team. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Filipaina. I've got questions from Member Namani, Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Cooper. Just remember, members, we've got two reports here. This one is on a report on the targeted engagement, and then we'll go to the what could be considered the more substantial report. Member Namani.
Yeah, kia ora. I've just got a couple of questions acknowledging that we've got the two agenda items as the Chair's spoken about, so I really want to focus on process in this agenda item, deal with the substance in the next agenda item. Just in relation to the resolutions, there's a note that stakeholder feedback has been addressed in the development of the plan and we've received it. So I just wanted clarity. When you make reference to stakeholders, partners, are you also referring to mana whenua, Mātā Waka and the Independent Māori Stat Board whose consultation is ongoing? So I just want clarity on that. On the one hand, the discussion's ongoing, but on the other, it's almost like this is locking in the feedback to date that could well be ongoing.
Through the Chair, we are still receiving feedback from some stakeholders and partners, and we're trying to address that as we get that. In the next item, we're actually putting on the table how we have addressed some feedback which has come in since the agenda closed. So you can actually see some of that feedback and how we propose to change the draft on that basis.
Can you clarify for me if the discussion with mana whenua and Mātā Waka and Independent Māori Statutory Board is ongoing? I would assume that basic reasonable consultation would be you don't lock views in until you've finished the conversation.
So we're still working through feedback from, for example, from IMSB, and where we can, we've addressed that feedback today in the Transport and Access and Belonging and Participation. We'll continue to work on the other outcomes in the development strategy that we'll bring back on the 28th of November. But if through that discussion and feedback and closing the loop with you, then that there are any further changes, we can bring those back to the 28th of November committee.
So just one last question and a clarification. If we all already know that there are points of contention that you're seeking in the next agenda item to lock in, how will you manage that? If you already know there are some outstanding matters of contention that haven't been taken into account, how will you address that?
Well, they're definitely being taken into account. I've seen.
Well, they're being taken into account. They haven't been provided for in the way that we think it ought to be provided for.
Denise?
So we've been looking through the feedback, and where we can, we're proposing today how we can address some of that feedback. But obviously we haven't closed the loop with you because we have we need to cover off all of that feedback and come back to you with a formal response to your formal feedback.
So just in theory, well in practice hopefully, as the consultation is ongoing with mana whenua, Mātā Waka and the Independent Māori Statutory Board, despite what you're seeking for us in the next agenda item, from us in the next agenda item, you will be open to changing the content.
Maybe just to put things in context, what we are going to table on the next agenda item is actually further changes that you have not seen. So we're going to hand that as a track change version so that you can see some of the feedback that's come in since the agenda went out and how we can deal with that. So you will actually see that. In terms of the engagement with mana whenua and Mātā Waka, yes, there has been more, but that is also coming to a close. And we have to get to a point where we actually adopt a draft document so that we can go out for consultation. So over the next week or two, yes, so some tweaks can still be made, some things can be added, but we have to have a cutoff point. We can't keep on engaging and not land a draft. The engagement will continue, but there needs to be a draft and then we carry on again. So that's just the point we're working towards. But as I say, in the next agenda item, an additional document is going to be tabled that has incorporated and is proposing further changes.
You're suggesting that we may be happy with that further change?
I think you might.
I'll leave it.
Thank you, Member Namani. Thank you, Jacques. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, team, well done. So you've gone out to a fairly extensive groupings to people engagement. Did they have much commentary around the structure and overall geography of the plan as proposed in this digital format?
Yes, there certainly has been, and it's been really positive. People think that we have identified the really big issues, that the outcomes are focusing on the really big things that Auckland is facing. They find it a lot easier than the previous plan. It is far more simple, and people appreciate that, and people can follow this. But it's quite easy. You can get the bulk of it on one A3 page, and that makes it really easy. It's very hard to do that with the old page. So it's been really positive, as in the broader sense. It makes sense to people and they can follow it.
There was no concern about the lack of finite detail?
Oh, no, of course. With some stakeholders, just because of the nature of things they do focus on detail, and that is really important to them. So, of course, yes, there's been feedback to incorporate a lot more detail, to incorporate actions. There's been suggestions that we should have detailed targets on all kinds of things. But there has been the direction from this committee that we really need to lift the plan in terms of setting direction, not spelling out how you do everything, because that changes and you actually need to involve more people in that. So yeah.
Generally positive, though, about the structure and
geography. The framework.
Good.
But yeah, some people, of course, do want more detail.
That's critical. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Cooper.
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Jacques, at this stage, it's probably worth just explaining a key stakeholder that we haven't been able to hear from at this stage, and that is the new government. There are various ministries. In this case, it would be the paper that we're coming to, for example, it would be MB, and it would be Ministry of Transport and Housing, etc. So can you just outline for all of our benefit where the government, which has only just been recently formed and their ministries are not in place, might be contributing, subject to our agreement, of course, to the Auckland plan?
I'm just going to rephrase how you introduced this slightly. We have heard from government. That was the previous government. So there has been a lot of involvement from central government through officers. But you're absolutely right. In terms of the new government, they have not made any input yet, and understandably so. They've just not had the time to do that. The time for the new government to provide feedback and input onto the plan, and just to note, we have to do that, that's what the legislation requires, will probably be during February, March, April, May next year. They will have had a chance to understand where the Auckland plan is and where they would like to see certain things going. So yes, I would expect there would be parts of the plan that probably would change to some degree. In some cases might be a significant change in the early part of next year when we do the formal engagement. You're absolutely right. Transport. The transport outcome is chiefly based on ATAP at the moment. That's what we have had to work with. The government has signalled that they would like some changes to ATAP, and so it is probably going to have to reflect that. So one would expect some there. You would also expect some possibly in terms of the housing outcome. There might be a slight change of direction there. Those are probably the two big ones. Certainly in terms of opportunities in prosperity, where there is a big focus on education, training, skill development, getting people ready for the jobs of the future, the government has indicated a number of things there, so that might come through stronger. So yeah, that alignment probably happens to some degree next year.
Okay, thank you. No further questions on that. It's moved and seconded. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. Declare that carried. Thank you. We'll now